couple more.
Rounded.
There's another brass basket here, which is pretty much the same as we've seen. But this is a very curious little piece that I had to look closely at to confirm something more about it. Clearly we've got a much different blade here. This is what we call a spadroon blade. Spadroon is somewhere between a broadsword and a small sword. I'll just grab a small sword. It's an original wee small sword, but early 18th century, so contemporary with quite a few of these baskets. Small sword is your civilian sidearm, designed for thrusting only. Triangular, hollow ground triangular section blade. In fact, that's why a lot of the German makers were brought into the UK, because they'd really mastered a way of hollow grinding the blade. You can either hollow grind or you can forge these flutes into a small sword blade. Obviously the forging takes longer and it's more difficult to get a finer result. The Germans had engineered a way of making a really hollow ground blade which really reduces the weight in it, the lightness, but retains a strength and rigidity for thrusting. So the small sword, very different method of use, and basically if you trained in both broadsword fencing and small sword, then the spadroon was your ideal combination. It was a blade that was still broader than a small sword, but not as broad as a broadsword. It was somewhere between the two. It was light and fast. You could use it as a small sword for thrusting actions, you could use it as a broadsword for cutting, just as easily.
May I see your small sword?
So this is what we call a spadroon blade. Now, quite a few of the government pieces I've seen have had spadroon blades as well. It's got a lovely little hilt that's got quite a cant to it, quite an angle, and what appears to be a more small sword, late rapier or small sword type pommel. And at first I'd looked at this and thought it could be a mishmash of bits. Sometimes 19th century or whenever, they've had a blade, they've had a hilt and so on, and they'll just cobble things together to have another sword for the wall. But this actually appears to be a very deliberately made, well engineered sword. The pommel, if you look closely in, has been filed in to accept these bars. These bars at the top of the hilt are actually much closer in than you would find for any of the broadsword pommels, which require to be a larger diameter. So the basket's been made intentionally sized, and the pommel's been made intentionally for these bars, so these are compatible. So the blade also, with that degree of cant on the bottom of the guard, that blade's sitting flush with it. There's no gaps, there's no difference in the shoulders. It's been made again for this hilt, and it sits perfectly flush up against it. The grip as well is of a form, slightly flatter form, that in fact this is a more natural grip with it, more as you would hold a small sword. So what I think we have here is another swordsman's sword, but a swordsman who knew both the small sword and the broadsword and was prepared to face either weapon equally. Bane. So this really is a swordsman's sword. This is one of the most beautifully balanced blades and well-tempered blades that I've come across in this collection. Really is something special. This is what's known as a Drury style hilt, named after Drew Drury, who was one of the sword makers who produced one of the largest quantities of swords for government contracts. Almost sheet steel, pressed pretty much out of sheet steel in various sections and welded together. So mass-produced hilts, but this is compatible with this beautiful blade, and it just makes them the most wonderful weapon in the hand. So this one really is a joy to handle.
Paul, having felt your Andrew Farrar, that feels real to me. It feels like a proper sword that's designed not for a different type of combat. You know, different roles in it. It's not just you've got a sword, I've got a sword. That seems to be a killing weapon.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it just It just feels right to me for that.
Sure.
Bang. I'm going to take his arm off. Bang.
Some are more what you would call sword and targe swords.
Horseman, maybe?
Possibly, yeah.
Or an executioner's sword?
Yeah, possibly. This is, without question, a Jacobite sword. It's a typical Jacobite style hilt, and the blade, backsword blade with a single fuller, and has some lettering in here. God beware de Ofrecht Scotten. God defend the upright Scot. So this is the kind of sentiment that you would have very much in German again, so again from one of the German makers for the Scottish market. You know, they quite often have sentiments like this in the blade, even more desirable for a Jacobite to have something like this that is, you know, nationalistic sentiment in his sword. Just move on. A different style of basket, made up of loops of round section steel. Again, still just as protective, still just as functional. Very light and fast blade as well. You know, well balanced and a great tool for the job. Definitely a different style of sword altogether. It was a nice wee piece that needed a wee bit of work actually. There was at least a 1/4 inch gap going on. Sometimes find gap in the grips with shrinkage. Wood just dries and shrinks over time, and so sometimes you find it literally receding to create gaps. The hilt was all loose, it was tied on with a bit of wire, so I actually had to fill those gaps and get the pommel down again to tighten up the hilt and repeen it. So there's actually a wee bit of restoration work on this one. Inveraray Ferrara, double fullered, light fast blade, and I would have no doubts in saying this was a Jacobite sword. Cheers. Yep.
For that, the hilt seems a bit less flat, kind of more, like you said, more.
It's more round section.
Is that of a particular place, or?
Certainly a particular make, and can't necessarily say, can't necessarily identify a particular place. Now, got some interesting stuff. This is a government basket of a style that's known as a pinch of snuff style hilt, and that's named after a painting. It was painted in 1760, and painting's called A Pinch of Snuff, and it was of a redcoat officer taking a pinch of snuff, and he's got a basket of this style cradled in his arm. So that's where it comes from. But these are seen as post 45 hilts, reckoned to be about 1750, 1760 in pattern, but beautifully made. I mean, really beautifully made. And this is a quality blade as well. Double fullered backsword, and you've got a nice bit of engraving work with Inveraray Ferrara going on up here as well. Could be it could have been a captured Jacobite blade. You see combinations of these, and this is more than likely a piece of red coat that's used here, just as a wee cushion between the blade shoulders and the guard. But really a lovely sword. This is one of my favourites here. A wee Glasgow hilt. And Glasgow hilts are defined by the flat bars that are fullered and often foiled in with detail. Beautifully crafted. A lot of fine filing work going on around the panels here, and a gorgeous little nippy sweetie of a backsword blade. Very light and very fast. I mean, you could cut with surgical precision with this. Just a real jolly hand. Absolute cracker. Again, another swordsman's sword. They knew, whoever owned this originally, they knew what they were doing.
Thank you.
really defines the Glasgow pattern hilt. These broad, flat bars that are filed in for this decorative work. So this is a proper Glasgow style hilt. The backsword blade again, nicely foliate engraved with Inveraray Ferrara. I'd say this is quite possibly from the style of it. It could be the same maker as the government hilt shows over there. Quite possible this blade's been broken at one point as well. Broken a section off the tip. You know that as the fuller continues all the way to the end. And you only find that really with broken blades. Now this is one of the nicer crafted pieces here. This again is a government style hilt. These are identified with government troops. But the style of this hilt, basically you've got flat bars and they're filed here to, creates a wavy pattern. This is seen as in the style of Walter Allen, who was a sterling maker. I'm just going to get played over these just now. There's a couple of drops of rain going on there.
Can you go back in?
Yeah, so get one of those in just now and get them under wraps. Okay.
He's not to bring any, we've got them. Just text me if you know I've got them.
Right, cheers.
We'll get to the last sword. There's 3 more to go.
Let's go sword there.
That one's good too.
No, this is this would be of southern manufacture. Now, filed in so you get this wavy effect. Walter Allen was one of the best, most innovative sword makers and hilt makers in Scotland. There was a family of sterling makers, John Allen Senior, John Allen Junior and Walter Allen, his son. And Walter Allen was really the innovative genius, really creative genius. His style of hilts broke the mould. They went against the standard styles of hilts that you would find. And he came up with amazing designs, quite often with these wavy bars going on, and stunning craftsmanship. You'll find a collection of these swords, you probably saw them today, at the National Museum. On the first floor up, they've got a display of a lot of Scottish relics, and they've got one case with, I think there's half a dozen basket hilts, and they're all John Allen and Walter Allen originals, and it's in that one case you have got probably some of the finest basket hilts in Scotland today in one little case, so it's well worth checking out, and you'll see the differences between the two of them as well, between John and Walter Allen's style. This blade's marked Mi Fecit Hounslow, so this is made in Hounslow Heath. So this has been made by one of the German smiths that came across to staff the Hounslow mills. It's a long blade and it gets remarkably thin down here, and you've got a well-tempered, flexible sword here. This is a well-crafted blade. Excellent piece. Just because it's still up and down and not hammer out in the another couple of interesting pieces. This is one of the earliest swords here.
Paul, is the grip of that last one longer as well?
It is, yeah, it does. It likes that grip, yeah. It likes the thumb and back grip. This is what we call a ribbon hilt basket. One of the earlier styles, certainly 17th century. And yeah, made of this kind of flat sheeting. Very protective, you've got a lot of protection going on. And just nice to see an earlier example. It is what we call a peak nose. The blades of this period tend to be quite short and broad, certainly broad, quite broad blades in them. So, you know, something's made this short then you're looking at close combat, and you're looking at a blade this broad, and it's got heft to it as well. This is a chopper, this is taking bits off, you know. This is not designed for delicate fencing by any means. This really is a close combat beastie. Let's start to rain proper, is it?
Thinking about it.
Maybe get them in.
Get the table in, just in case it gets a wee bit heavier. So we'll just lift it up. Yeah, there'll be a clang because there's an aluminium leg. It's not a sword. Never seen Armoury dominoes? Not the first time. Right, just put that machine gun there.